The abduction and death of a 7-year-old South Salt Lake girl reminds us how precarious everyday life can be, sometimes for those who are least able to defend themselves. Steve is in the cafe with someone who has made it a personal challenge to help.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. I'm here with Melanie Squire. Melanie, thank you for coming in the cafe today.
Thank you.
It is on a sad day, and your book actually addresses the very issue that we're talking about here today with the 7-year-old girl, Sunamu, that was killed. And you have written a book, I Must Say No, and it's about this very sort of thing, about children encountering strangers and how you get around it. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book and something about it.
First of all, I want to express my condolences to the family. Sure. Having a child that is lost through abduction is a parent's worst nightmare.
Yes.
I wrote the book because there was actually a local abduction in my neighborhood, and I wanted so much to educate my own children on the topic. So I went to the library. Much to my surprise, I couldn't find one book in the stranger safety section for my children, and I thought, how can we not have such an important tool?
How long ago did this happen now that you decided?
This was about 4 years ago, the Elizabeth Smart case. And I thought, I don't know how this will work out, but I'm going to write this book because this needs to be out there.
Now, the book obviously is written in a way that children can understand it at various ages. Give us an idea of the kinds of techniques you use to get the point across.
Well, it's about a little boy named Cole who walks home alone for the first time. And children love this because they can relate to that scenario. But the majority of abductions take place by someone that a child knows. So I've incorporated that into the book, where children are asked to go with a friend, but they haven't gotten permission yet, or a neighbor. So these are very important situations that we need to address with our children. The other thing is that most strangers will use tactics such as, would you like some candy, or I need some directions. So all of the scenarios that are in the book are actual scenarios that strangers use to entice our children.
And they use the one about, can you help me find my dog or my pet,
yes,
don't they?
Yes.
I happened to watch a show some years ago, and it was mentioning on this. And while the mothers had their children on the playgrounds, there on a big toy in the back, one reporter talked with the mother, while someone else who was part of the news group went over and asked the very question about, have you seen my dog, and would you help me find it? And often the parents or the mothers would say, well, my child has been educated.
Yeah.
And while they were doing it, within the very field of the camera, you could see the child starting to go off. And I remember one mother, when the reporter was talking to her, said, look, there, she began to cry immediately. She turned to look to see her child walking away with a stranger, with the very, very ploy that you talked about. That is, help me find the dog. So now, what was Cole learn about if somebody needs some help? We don't want to teach kids not to be helpful and loving of people. How do you get around that?
It is okay to say no to people. It is okay to say no to strangers, and children learn that. There's a little phrase, I ask my mom before I go, I will not come, I must say no. So repetition is the most important thing in this situation. We ask ourselves, how many times do we have to tell our children to say please and thank you before they can do it on their own? Well, stranger safety is no different.
Right.
They need this repetition. So we have also set something up that is important for parents for free. They can go on a website and they can get onto a list that will email them 2 times a year for 3 times, 2 times a year for 3 years in a row to remind them to speak with their child about stranger safety.
Oh, that's a great thing, because that repetition is so important. You think you've told them once and think they know it, just the way these people did in the documentary that I was telling you about, and their kids hadn't gotten it. So you have to continue to go over it with them again and again. I think you use in your book, I Must Say No, I think you use some characters that the kids are often familiar with already.
Yes, Pinocchio is in it, and the wolf with the 3 little pigs, and Hansel and Gretel. So I wanted the children to feel familiar with these characters so that they could understand a little more of what is happening, that it's not always going to be a stranger.
That's right. And in the case, this tragic case in our own area, that's exactly what it was. There were people in the same building, probably known to the family, maybe even knew each other's names, and the girl probably knew the person.
So sad.
It happened once again. I think, if I'm correct, that even the majority of abductions usually are taken by somebody that the child knows. Isn't that so?
Yes, and the average case is a 12-year-old girl. So this shows that even at that age, we still need to be speaking with our children.
That's right. Now, how many children do you have, Melanie?
I have 3 and 1 on the way.
Congratulations. And do you obviously go through the same sort of thing, trying to teach your children? And do you feel that they've picked it up? Do you feel confident that your children could say no to a stranger if they came by and tried to do something?
I do. There's a lot of different scenarios that you need to speak with your children about so that they understand, and when things are twisted a little bit, exactly what they need to do. But I've been impressed with watching them and how they have learned and picked up on the little sayings of my book. So.
And they can just parrot that right back
Yes.
immediately. I must say no.
Yes.
I must ask my mother first, as you said. Well, that's great. Well, we've been talking here today with Melanie Squire, who wrote a book, I Must Say No, and it comes at a time most critical, as the recent events in our community have shown. Melanie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Steve and Melanie, that was some really great advice. Thank you. I know as a mother, when I heard this story yesterday, I've got 2 little girls, and I sat down and I talked to them about stranger danger. And when I heard the news this morning, it was really quite heartbreaking. So good to know.
Good book. When we come back from the break.